August 27th, 2023, the scariest decision of my life. I've come to a conclusion, and I've arrived at the same conclusion for my whole life. I only now have the courage to admit and acknowledge my decision. I know what type of man I must become, and I believe that this may be the first in a series of many steps that I must take. The road to hell is not paved with bad or good intention, but rather a lack of it. All my prior life experiences culminating to this point. The filter I must meet to begin paving my own road. My heart grows heavy, my sleepless nights filled with the molasses, the cross to bear for the cowardly and hypocritical such as myself. The time to lay in the bed I have made has come. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most difficult decisions of my life thus far. The day that I told my parents that I was no longer Christian. And in doing so, I'm hoping we can explore this concept of transitioning into adulthood. You see, my whole life, I grew up as the son of a pastor and a psychologist, and I largely agreed with the values that were being shared and taught. But as I started going through my education, I kept on asking myself more difficult questions, and I kept on arriving to more difficult conclusions and answers, and I realized that my faith in this religion that I grew up with was faltering. By the end of college, I had quietly recognized that I was no longer Christian. And for that whole duration of time, I kept that secret from my parents. I eventually met with my fiance, fell in love with her, and we were living together. And I remember for 2 years, I was not sleeping well. I would stare up at the ceiling in cold sweats, exhausted. And I couldn't help but think about how spineless and cowardly I was being. I kept on asking myself, why am I not telling my parents the truth? And I kept coming back to that same conclusion that I owed it to them and to myself to tell them the truth. And the night that catalyzed this solid realization for me was the night that I looked at my fiance and recognized that she deserved an adult, not a child. She deserved someone that was willing to lay in the bed that they've made, to not go around running away from the consequences of their actions. And with that, I decided that I would tell my parents the truth finally. That on Friday night, I would call them, letting them know that on Saturday morning, I would be driving over and telling them some news. And then I would come back on Sunday, so they had a full day to digest that information. And so I wouldn't incite an inflammatory response. We would have a conversation and not just yell at each other, because I genuinely didn't want to attack their character or disrespect them. I merely wanted to tell them the truth. I remember sitting there on my couch, my heart beating out of my chest, my hands clammy, tears welling up in my eyes, trying to find the energy and the life needed to utter the words, "I'm sorry." And I think the instinctual response that my mom had was to say, "Don't worry, I still love you. We still love you. Don't worry, just come down tomorrow. Like, everything will be fine, just whatever." And I kept on saying, "You're not hearing me, you're not listening. I lied to you. I am no longer Christian." And the conversation went quiet. And she said the same thing, "We still love you, just come home." And I remember hanging up, falling on this exact same rug, crumbling to the floor. And I just laid on this rug for a good 2 to 3 hours. It felt like the past 2 years leading up to this moment had just escaped me, and I couldn't really recognize the feeling that I was experiencing. After I came back home and talked with my parents, there was friction, obviously. This is not something you just disappear. But at the end of the day, I think that I'm at a point where I'm the most intimate with my parents that I've ever been. It feels like I'm a 5-year-old kid again with my parents, that I can tell them anything. And from doing this, I also feel like there's a newfound respect I have for myself and the weight that I have off of my shoulders. And ultimately, it's been one of the most freeing experiences of my life. The purpose of this video is not to vilify any ideological groups or religious groups or a-religious groups. I do have a question for everyone though, which is, do you currently have something that you're hiding? A decision that you feel like you need to make to transition into adulthood? Do you feel like you currently have enough courage and enough of a stable environment to make that step of faith for yourself? Or do you feel like you still need more time? Have you already made a decision like this to tell your parents or loved ones or yourself the truth? And what happened as a result of that pivotal moment in your life? I look forward to hearing your comments, and I'll see you all in the next one.